Alright, so I think the Rot Stang is going to be the test vehicle for this carburetor. It also already has the Summit 600 carburetor on it, so some of the tuning will be pretty much the same, and it'll be easy to tell kind of where it's at. But anyway, we have Zach's carburetor out here getting ready to put it on. We can see it looks, again, pretty fresh and new. This Summit 600 here I've had for about 3 or 4 years. Still looking pretty good. Again, it's a tremendous carburetor. So we're going to get that all unbolted and get his carb on there. The Summit unit comes with a supplied fuel rail, and we're going to get his slapped on here, and then we'll just steal our fitting off of our rail unit. I really don't like taking these rails on and off. You can just bend them up real easy, and they're kind of difficult to get on. And a lot of people will get irritated with me having this Teflon sealer on here, but again, it's a flange fitting, if my phone would focus here. So none of that Teflon can really get back in there. And then you would say, well, if it's working right, you don't need it. Well, a lot of these fuel rails are kind of Chinese, and getting that flange to meet up without a leak is pretty difficult. Also, this little flange nut will seal, also has a sealing surface against the back side of that flange. And usually what I have issues with is this front flange leaks. So the Teflon helps to protect it. It always seems to seal on the back side, but the inner flange seems to always leak, and this Teflon stops it from leaking out the carb. And in this way, there is no way, with how small of a leak you would have, that any of this Teflon could get into your carburetor. So you know, you want to stay away from using your Teflon on your MPT style stuff, but otherwise you're all right on the flange stuff again. So I'm going to get this rail slapped on there, get this carburetor in here, and we should be good to go. We got our vacuum gauge and our timing light and our screwdriver, and that's really all we need, and we can get her set up. So without further ado, let me get this carburetor transferred on there, and we'll get to dialing it in. Now in this particular engine, I'm running the Summit supplied carb spacer that comes with the carburetor. It's kind of a carburetor spacer, heat insulator, gasket, all-in-one type deal. Now these are pretty nice, but one thing to watch out for is if you do have a dual plane intake or something of that nature where it's split, you don't want to run one of these, because that's kind of negating the whole ability of that dual plane intake to work as it was designed. So, but with this engine in particular, it's got a Victor Jr. big stupid intake on it, so we're not hurting it at all by putting this type of open spacer gasket deal on it. So just something you want to be mindful of there. If you have a dual plane, you probably want to run a 4-hole style gasket, and if you do run a spacer, a 4-hole style spacer. Alright, so at this point we got it all plumbed in, landed, bolted down, and we're ready to fire it off. We got our vacuum gauge hooked up. We're actually not going to need our timing light because I already know where this engine wants to run with this particular style of carburetor. So our ignition timing should stay the same, so we shouldn't have to mess with that. Now, without having a choke here and having to hold my foot on the pedal when it's cold, I'm just going to go ahead, and we see where our curb idle screw is right now. I'm going to go ahead and give it a full turn past where it is currently. So that's a half, and that's a full turn, so that it can idle under its own power, and we'll bring it back once we reach operating temperature. So I guess it's time to fire it up, check for leaks. And again, that's why we did that, so we can get out, walk around, check for leaks and stuff, you know. So without further ado, I guess here we go. All right, time to fire this thing up. I imagine it's going to crank for a little while, as it doesn't have any fuel in the bowls, and I didn't prime them, and I don't have an electric fuel pump to prime anything, as this car has a mechanical pump. So I guess we're going to be cranking for a while, I'm assuming. Let our starter cool. Here we go again. Getting some oil pressure out of it. There she is. All right, we got her up to operating temperature now. Can bring her back down to earth. On our idle RPM. So we're gonna hear a little tapping noise because one of my header bolts fell out and I got kind of an exhaust leak. So anyway, the first thing I always check is for leaks, and when we fired it up, we didn't have any leaks on our engine. The next thing I like to take a look at is your float height, and I need to lower the float height on the secondaries ever so slightly. But one thing to always consider is this is going back to another individual, and this carburetor is sitting somewhat on a slope. So it actually looks like they're pretty accurate and they were set right from the factory. So I'm pretty happy with those. When he gets it back, it'll be pretty correct. So the next thing we're going to look at is setting our idle mix screws. And we can see that we're not making a lot of manifold vacuum. It's kind of sporadic and it definitely smells rich. So like always, we're going to start turning them in, and we're going to go a quarter turn at a time, and we want to adjust both of these at the same time. So if I turn one, I have to turn the other because we want an even distribution throughout the carb. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick, and then we'll check back with our manifold vacuum. All right, that pretty much does it. So we have a semi-steady idle reading. So I took it to the highest vacuum reading I could by leaning down the screws. And then when it got to the point where the vacuum started to drop back off, I took it back to the point of the highest vacuum, and then I put 1/8 of a turn richer into the mixture screws. So I backed them out 1/8 of a turn. And now we seem to be idling good. Good throttle response through the carburetor. I tightened that header bolt so it wasn't so annoying. Look down through the carburetor. So with that, I think we're ready for a test drive. The idle note sounds clean, smells clean out the back of the car. So I'm happy with it. I think we're in good shape, and their carburetor runs good. There's nothing wrong with it.